Greetings, everybody. This is Izzy here coming to you with my review for the 2020 comic book film Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. I just finished watching the film. It is 11:06 p.m. and I want to apologize in advance, actually, before I get into the details of this review, that my YouTube channel had been remarkably silent as of late, just because I felt, with the exception of Bad Boys for Life and 1917, there hasn't been a many number of films that I felt compelled to do a review on. And especially considering the month of January is always those are always kind of like the dead months, if you will. So with that said, I apologize. The next few films that are getting ready to come out within the month of February and March seem like it's going to be a really good slew of films that is definitely going to be reviewed as far as my YouTube channel is concerned. So you will be hearing a lot from me in the next few weeks. So be on the lookout for that. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get with this review for the Birds of Prey, the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. Now, I will fully admit that I'm not overly well knowledgeable as far as the Birds of Prey comic book and the team is concerned. I was never particularly interested within the storyline, just because they weren't a team that I felt remarkably interested in. There were certain characters that I was familiar with, just because I've heard people talking about them, or I read about them on the internet somewhere. But from an overall story standpoint, I was never particularly interested in the Birds of Prey team. I mean, I knew about like Huntress, Black Canary, Oracle. I knew about them, and I knew about Black Mask, and I knew about a little bit of their origins. But if I get anything wrong as far as the characters and the storyline is concerned with this review, feel free to correct me. I'm sure there's a lot more people who are knowledgeable about the content than I am. So, once again, I won't get mad. Just feel free to correct me if I am wrong on anything. When I initially saw the trailer for the Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, I must admit that I was not necessarily sold on the fact, just because, again, it wasn't anything that I was interested in, and the trailers really didn't help as far as making it look didn't make it look interesting enough for me to feel like, man, I have to watch this. I have to be there opening night for it. But considering I had some free time on my hands, I decided, well, why not watch the film and then do a review, as I promised on my Facebook. I have to say, DC has started to really come into their own as far as their films are concerned. The only crime that the DCWB did, in my opinion, was attempt to rush their universe instead of taking their time with the content and the characters and the storylines. Now, it's not to say that I believe that the films that were released prior weren't as bad as critics and certain fans made them out to be. I do believe that there were certain critics who had an agenda as far as bombarding DC films like Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, Suicide Squad. I feel that they wanted to harp so much negativity on those films that they didn't really recognize the great qualities that they brought and how much drastically different they were compared to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Whereas the Marvel Cinematic Universe was more of the bright, colorful, quippy one-liners, excitement, explosions, action, fun entertainment. Whereas the DC Extended Universe, it was more about, I felt that it was more visually and stylistically different and had more of an epic feel, or more of a God amongst men feel. Whereas, the Marvel Cinematic Universe was just, they had a specific formula, whereas DC was more serious with their content. But other than that, I have to say, Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was really good. I was absolutely sold within the first second of the film, just because I loved just how different it was. One review stated that it was a comic book film with a splash of Tarantino, and that's actually a pretty accurate description, if I can be completely honest with you, my friends. It really does almost give you the perception of what it would be like if Quentin Tarantino directed a comic book film. Even though Quentin Tarantino did not direct this film, you could definitely see a lot of certain influences and elements, and the gritty undertones and the violence, and how it felt like you were watching an old school traditional comic book film, but also mixed with a lot of comedy and like you're watching a mix of comedy, action, comic book scenarios, and a gritty crime thriller, and that's what it's really all about. It manages to combine all those specific elements, and you are hooked. I was hooked, like I said, from the minute the film started. Excuse me, from the second the film started. Kathy Yan did an amazing job as far as the cinematography was concerned, and just how she was able to get so much greatness out of the actresses and actors involved. Margaret Robbie, she is the quintessential Harley Quinn. I mean, there is no doubt about it. She does an absolutely amazing job, and not only her, but Journey Smollett Bell, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Ali Wong, Ewan McGregor. Another highlight I want to add to this review is Ewan McGregor as Black Mask. Hilarious, and absolutely frightening. Just Black Mask has always been one of my favorite villains, actually, just because, again, I always knew that he was a Batman villain, and I just loved the overall conceptual look that the character has, as far as the intimidating presence that he conveys to those he wishes to strike fear in. And he does. Ewan McGregor is one of the main highlights of the film, along with Margaret Robbie, and along with Rosie Perez, and along with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and even Journey Smollett Bell. They just have so much wonderful chemistry with one another that the way they're bouncing off each other as far as their dialogue is concerned, and their reactions, and the comedic timing that they have, it really just makes you feel that these are actresses who just know exactly what makes each other tick, and how they were able to capture their characters. I mean, again, I don't know, other than Margaret Robbie, as far as Harley Quinn is concerned, comic book accurate. But when it comes to, Black Canary and and Huntress, again, I'm not overly familiar with those characters, so I am not going to say if they're comic book accurate or not. That would be for those who are obviously familiar with the comic books and the characters. That would be for them to judge. But through it all, I thought that this film was one of the best comic book films. It will most likely be one of the best comic book films of all time, much later on in the future. I think word of mouth is really going to help this film propel it into a more successful territory, just because of how different stylistically and visually that it is compared to the other, not only to the MCU, but just the DC films in general. I mean, DC has really struck gold as of late when it comes to their solo films, or even their team films. They struck gold with Wonder Woman, then they struck gold again with Aquaman, then they struck gold again with Shazam, and then, of course, even though it's not part of the DC universe, they did an amazing job with the Joker film with Joaquin Phoenix, and then you had the Birds of Prey that came out just today, and again, an amazing film, and then they have Wonder Woman 1984 that's coming out later this year. So they are doing a pretty good job of keeping track of not only the quality of their films, but the fans are finally getting something to sink their teeth into compared to the rushed and non-organic feel that they originally attempted to do with their universe. But another cool highlight of the film, other than the action was very good too. Just very stripped down, very in your face and gritty and bloody, and just balls to the wall excitement. You couldn't. Once the action does get started, it never lets up, and it does slow down a little bit. I will say there are certain moments of the film where it does kind of draw back and let you kind of get immersed within the universe and the characters. But overall, it was truly an amazing experience for me personally. It was funny, it was violent, and there was quite a few emotional moments in the film that really kind of gives you a look into the mindset of Harley Quinn. Now, the beautiful thing about this film, as far as the Harley Quinn character is concerned, we all are very familiar with the overall concept that the Joker is an unreliable narrator, so you can't necessarily believe anything that he says, because he is such an unpredictable wild card that you have to take anything that he says with a grain of salt. And I think you could more or less kind of do this with this film as far as Harley Quinn is concerned, because again, you're looking at a character who has primarily associated herself with the Joker and allowed herself to be abused and used for this character for his own personal and monetary gain. And with her being a trained psychologist, you can actually understand that perhaps, hey, maybe this is another one of those unreliable narrator events where you could kind of wiggle your way around certain things and retcon certain things and not tie her down to this specific storyline. there are some pretty significant cool Easter eggs here, references to the DCEU, some cool hints with the to Suicide Squad and Batman, and I will say it's not necessary to watch Suicide Squad and before you watch this. It's within the confines of the DC universe, but at the same time, it's its own film and its own storyline. Excuse me. Other than that, the cinematography is wonderful. The action is great. The acting performances is truly top notch. And one of the coolest things, another cool thing about this film is the music. I love the transitioning effect of how not only they can manage to utilize the old school music feel, like with Hart, Barry White. Barry White is one of my favorite soul singers of all time, and hearing his music with any film just takes it up another extra notch for me personally. And there's a cool rendition of Pat Benatar's "Hit Me With Your Best Shot," which is very different, very slowed down, and kind of has a kind of doom metal, doom rockish type of feel to it. But it works. I mean, it absolutely does work. But other than that, I have to give Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn a 2 thumbs up, a 5 out of 5. I had a great time watching it. I highly recommend it. It's not for kids. There is a lot of profanity. There's a lot of blood. There's a lot of violence in the film, so I do not recommend taking any kids that is 2 and below, or 5 and below, or 6 and below, or what have you. I don't recommend taking your kids to watch this. Now, I don't believe it's not necessarily horrible if they're 11, 12, or 13 years old, but anything below that is kind of stretching it just because of how gruesome it can get, and it does get gruesome in the beginning of the film. It very, very, very gruesome. There are certain things I didn't like about the film, but I'm not going to harp on those just because it didn't deter me enough to make me feel as if that I was watching something that was a waste of my time. But and they're minuscule type negatives that I don't think it won't override my 5 out of 5, 2 thumbs up rating, and I'll most likely get to that much later on in the future. Probably not. I'm not going to make any promises, but hey, it is what it is, my friends. Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, 5 out of 5, 2 thumbs up. Highly recommend it. Go watch it. When you do, please let me know in the comments section on my YouTube what you thought about it. Let me know on my Facebook what you thought about it. Provide a like. Either way, you will be hearing from me again with Sonic the Hedgehog next week, and I will see you all again, my friends. Be safe, stay warm, and peace out. Adios.